What's up now, boys? We're headed out to Abu Dhabi for a very stacked fight card, at least in my opinion. I thought the UFC did a great job with the matchmaking here. I really enjoyed breaking down tape for these matchups. Of course, headlined by Sandhagen and Nurmagomedov, which is just a spectacular matchup. Essentially, this is a number one contender spot. I believe the winner of this fight should be facing off with the winner of Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. There's really not even an argument to be made for someone else to be working their way up to be next in line, in my opinion. If there were somebody you want to try to throw in the mix, you could possibly say Deiveson Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion who's worked his way up in this division, who's been looking pretty good. He's fighting on this card as well. If he gets a victory over Marlon Chito Vera, that would be huge for him, but obviously he's still a little bit behind. I would like to see Figueiredo matched up with Petr Yan. I think that would be a great fight if he gets past Vera there first. Petr Yan, also a dark horse in the division. He was on a big-time losing streak before finally getting that W, but we all know there was a lot of asterisks in those losses, and he looked phenomenal in his last fight, and he also has some history with Sean O'Malley. A lot of people thought that he should have won that fight that they had there, so just something to keep an eye on in the bantamweight division. And yes, I do know Umar Nurmagomedov is only ranked 10th in the division, but he is the truth, and if he gets past Cory Sandhagen, I think that he is next in line. I just want to give a special shout out to everybody that's been joining me for the Fight Companions as well. I've been having a blast doing it. And like I keep saying, they're going to get better and better and better. As you guys saw in the last one, a little bit of a different overlay and stuff like that. But that's nothing compared to what the final product will look like. So I appreciate you guys for swinging by and joining me. That was a lot of fun this past weekend. And if you guys can, please like and subscribe to the channel. You guys see me grinding over here. I'm creeping up to that 10,000 mark for the subscribers, which will be huge. I definitely will do a big time free play video. I'm going to give you guys a play that I feel very confident in, that has some solid odds with it as well. Okay, that will be my thank you to you guys, and I promise you it will hit. How about that? So let's hit that 10K mark, please, guys. It means a lot to me. And if anybody wants to work with me as far as my official plays go, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Go check me out on Instagram at MMAFortuneTeller_. Shoot me a message if you want some further details there, or catch me on Twitter at the MMA Teller. Shoot me a message over there. Speaking of creeping up on 10K, we're almost at 10K followers on Instagram as well, ironically. So if you can help me out with that. And of course, before we jump into the first fight, a special shout out to BetUS. You guys know nobody is doing the deposit matches like BetUS. Sign up through the link in the description of this video. Get a 125% match on your first 3 deposits. All right, guys, let's go talk some fights.
The Teller.
Kicking the card off, we head over to the middleweight division. We got Sedriques, Dumas taking on Denis, Tiuliulin. Now, this is a lower level middleweight matchup. There's no question about that, but don't be surprised if we see some solid action here. Don't be surprised if we see a finish in this fight. Dumas is coming in off a disappointing performance, but if you guys are just looking at this fight and saying, oh, maybe he's showing to have some flaws in his chin, or showing that he might not be able to take a punch, just remember, guys, that was a fight against Rozaboyev where, yes, he did eat some heavy shots early on, but it seemed to me that he was clearly poked in the eye, and he looked over to the ref. The ref didn't catch it, and he eventually curled up in a ball and was TKO'd, but he really wasn't caught flush. He wasn't knocked out. He still has never been knocked out. His only other loss was that Josh Fremd submission loss, which Fremd is a good fighter. He's an underrated fighter. After that loss, he bounced back with 2 solid victories over Cody Brundage and Abu Azatar. Maybe not so solid in Cody Brundage's case. You never know what version of him you're getting, and I know some of you guys are really down on him, but still, Dumas has shown flashes. Let me just circle back also to his performance on Dana White's Contender Series, where he pulled off a nasty sub early on against Matej Panaj, which was a fighter that was very hyped up at the time, and since that loss has went on to win 3 fights in a row. Okay, so the fighter still does show some potential. Dumas has had some moments. Denis Tiuliulin, on the other hand, this dude trains with some of the most solid fighters in the game. He's well-traveled. He's trained over in Vegas with all the big fighters over there at Extreme Couture. He's been over in Thailand working on his Muay Thai. He trains over at Evolve Gym, I believe over in Russia. Heading into this fight, he's been surrounding himself with fighters like Rinat Fakhretdinov and Vadim Nemkov. Okay, so big names in the game, very talented dudes surround him. But if we're being quite honest, when he's in the cage, you could tell he is not on that level. Okay, he is tough. and he does have underrated power. If you want to take a look back at his last victory, that was a fight where he did land a knockout against Jamie Pickett, but Jamie Pickett, a very low-level fighter. But I still will say he is a fighter that goes in there, he headhunts, and he will look to knock you out. So if you show any flaws there, that could be a problem. But like I said earlier, I don't really believe we've seen that issue to be shown by Dumas. Okay, that there's an asterisk next to that one knockout loss that he had. Denis Tiuliulin, out of his 11 victories, 9 of them have come by way of knockout. But I'm going to say that he does not find the knockout here. I think that Dumas just moves a little bit smoother on the feet. He has shown us some flaws defensively, but he's working on that aspect of his game. He's just 28 years old. Okay, he has a lot more time to finish up as a product. While on the other hand, Denis Tiuliulin at 36, I do not expect to see any real growth in his game. I expect to see the same fighter that we've always seen. He's tough, he's decently well-rounded, but he's just really a subpar fighter in the UFC. He's a fighter that's lucky to have hung around as long as he has, and he's been getting finished in all of his losses too. And I know they're against high-level competition, but he's still going out there, he's getting finished. Just was knocked out against CLD, against Gregory Rodriguez, submitted by John Young Park. Alex Kizriev submitted him as well. And even dating back to his fights outside the UFC, he has lost to high-level fighters like Ikram, Alex Kirov, and even some of these names that you may not be as familiar with that he lost to early on in his career. If you dive into what they're about, their resumes are actually decently respectable. So there's not a lot of alarming losses on his resume. He's a battle-tested fighter. The 11-9 record does not really define him as a fighter. I don't think he's that bad, but he's not that great either. I think you guys know which way I'm going to go with my pick here. It's not a very confident pick, but I will take Dumas to bounce back with the victory here. I think that if we see a finish in this fight, which is very likely to happen, I actually think it's going to be more likely on the side of Dumas getting the finish. All right. He's shown a nose for that finish, right? We've seen him go out there and get even subs besides the knockouts. If you take a look at some of his action that he had on the regional scene early on, he had some flashy knockouts, head kick KOs and whatnot. I think he could throw something towards Denis Tiuliulin's way that could crack him and hurt him, and eventually he could finish him up. So I am going to take Sedriques to bounce back and get a victory. I hope he has his head right going into this fight, because I know he has had some distractions going on outside the cage as of recently. But I'm going to say that he's motivated. He comes to the cage and gets a W, and he's had a good amount of time to prepare for this fight. Dumas will have advantages in his youth, his length, and his athleticism here. And something I also do like about the matchup for him here is that he had ample time to prepare for this fight. Remember, they were supposed to face off in a short notice fight the last time the UFC was headed out to Abu Dhabi, in that card that was headlined by Robert Whitaker and Alex Kirov. And that fight, he was taken on short notice. That was a couple months ago. Now he has had ample time to prepare for this fight, and I think that little edge there will also help him out. Okay, so we head over to the betting line now. Over on BetUS, Sedriques Dumas opened up as a minus 210 favorite. It dipped the other way. He touched a minus 191, and then it completely turned on his head. It's going the other way now. He's a minus 220. I'll say this much. I'm not overly confident in Dumas to win this fight. Like I said, I mean, he has shown some flaws in his game. He's there to be hit at times, and he's just kind of a more green fighter. I wouldn't be reaching for him at a minus 220 line, but I like him to win the fight. I like him to get the finish. Maybe you keep an eye on that line. Maybe it dips back and you can catch it somewhere like around minus 185 or 190. That's more reasonable, but that's not even a play that I'm crazy about. Take a look at the prop bets for this fight. Maybe you can get a bargain on a KO finish for him there. That could be something that we talk about in the prop edition video for this card, which we will have out to you guys later in the week. But give me Sedriques Dumas to get that KO. In the lightweight division, we have Jai Herbert taking on Rolando Bedoya. Bedoya 0-2 in the UFC, still hunting for that first victory in the octagon. Now he's coming down in weight, right? He's been fighting up in the welterweight division. This will be the first time that he's fighting in the lightweight division in the UFC. I think that will suit him better for sure. You take a look at his frame and how he looked matched up against some of those welterweight fighters. I think that he'll be better suited off in this division. Now, Jai Herbert, a pretty established lightweight fighter. He's definitely had his ups and downs, but even when you take a look at some of his losses, they are somewhat impressive. I mean, if you could say that for a loss, but I mean, look at the level of competition. He did get knocked out against Ilia Topuria, but had some moments early on in that fight. I mean, he showed he can kind of hang for a little bit with a fighter that's, to the highest level, and Ilia Topuria there. had a loss against Faraz Zaim. I'm kind of high on Faraz Zaim, so I mean that's not really the worst loss as far as I'm concerned. That was in his last fight. The draw that he had with Ludovic Klein, that was a fight that he actually should have won, and a lot of major media scorecards had him still winning the fight, even with the point deduction that he had. That point deduction that he had for an eye poke, I believe it was, ended up pushing it to be a draw. But he was getting the better of Ludovic Klein, who is a fighter that has been on an absolute tear and a fighter that I'm extremely high on. Okay, so that shows you the level of fighter he could be when he's hitting on all cylinders. Victory over Kyle Nelson before that. He knocked out Kama Worthy. And again, just take a look at the losses. Hanato Moicano, high-level grappler, kind of exploited him down on the mat. That was a bad stylistic matchup for him. The Francisco Trinaldo fight was a fight where they were going to war. It was such a fan-pleasing affair. And he looked like he almost had some moments where he was going to get his own finish. And if the fight would have went to the scorecards, I think he was en route to winning the fight. But that fight just refused to go to the scorecards as they just kept throwing bombs at each other. And eventually Trinaldo caught him there. So not too much shame in that loss, man. I think he showed that he's a dog in there. So I know it looks messy here, but do understand that he's a talented fighter. He shows to have very fluid striking skills, specifically with his boxing. And he's good defensively as well. Hands are always up and tight. Kind of has an Edson Barbosa type of fighting style. Just doesn't have the same kind of kicks, but hands are always high, and he moves well. Now, one question mark I do have in regards to Herbert is his age. Okay, 36 years old. He should be on the decline. That could be a little bit of an issue here against a young, up-and-coming, hungry fighter like Bedoya, who's just 27 years old. I'm not crazy about that matchup there, but it will not keep me away from siding with Jai Herbert here. I will side with Jai Herbert. As I'm breaking down tape on these two fighters, I like what I see from Herbert a little bit more, and I'm going to say that he still has a little bit left to give to the fight game. Seems to be still hungry himself there. So he also will have about a 2-inch reach advantage and still will be about 2 inches taller, even though it was Bedoya fighting up in the welterweight division in his past couple of fights there. So give me Jai Herbert to win a decision. Bedoya has shown to be pretty tough. He did eat some big shots in that last fight against Kenan Song, but was never finished up in that fight. Didn't get knocked out against a fighter in K.S. Williams, who throws some serious heat. So, I mean, he's shown to be somewhat durable. And I'm going to say that Herbert doesn't get him out of there, but does enough to win a decision. Let's take a look at the betting line. Jai Herbert is a -160 on BetUS right now. Open up as a -170. A lot of up and down type of movement going on. But all in all, the line has come down. So we see action coming in on Bedoya. Doesn't necessarily surprise me because this is a fight that I have capped a lot closer than where it is. So I know some of you guys may not be crazy about my answers in these types of situations, but it is what it is. I broke down the tape. I mean, I stand behind what I'm saying here. I'm leaning towards Herbert's way, but I can't just sit here and steer you guys that direction and say, oh yeah, Herbert's going to go out there, he's going to knock him out, or Herbert's going to dominate him in a decision, go jump on his money line. It's just not what it is. I mean, the value is on Bedoya, in my opinion. I think this is a fight where, as wide as the line is, the value's on the underdog, but Herbert still shows to be a slightly better fighter, a more proven fighter. But just be careful targeting that fight. Sheesh. To the strawweight division, we got Victoria Dudakova taking on Sam Hughes. There is no question that the UFC wants Victoria Dudakova's career to go on the upward trajectory. They hope that she continues to win fights, and this is a fighter that could really make some noise and attract a lot of eyes to the fight game, okay? Some Valentina Shevchenko vibes going on there. Not talking about her fighting style. Maybe some of you guys agree or disagree with me there on the Shevchenko statement, but remember, Shevchenko is up there in age these days, okay? Now, as far as Dudakova not resembling anything that Shevchenko can do in the cage, you must note Dudakova is just 25 years old. How did Shevchenko look when she was 25 years old if you would have threw her in the octagon? Okay, so Dudakova has a lot of time to continue to improve her skills, and I would actually say that they haven't looked that bad. Okay, she's decently well-rounded. I think that if there is one question mark you have in regards to her, I kind of worry that she runs into a fighter that has some serious grappling that could kind of hold her down. So we saw her on her back a little bit against Frey, Jinyu Frey, who's a low-level fighter. But all in all, she did what she needed to do to get a W in that fight. And you take a look at some of the work that she's been doing. The victory she had on Dana White's Contender Series against Maria Silva aged pretty well. Maria Silva now 3-0 since that loss, fighting over in KSW. She had a victory over Estela Nunez that fight never really lasted, right? It was essentially an injury where the elbow was dislocated, and then that was the Jinyu Frey fight that we were just talking about in her last fight. She did have a unanimous decision. She was outlanding Frey on the feet, and I think that Dudakova's striking is pretty decent. She puts a decent amount of volume out there. I know it says 3.14 landed per minute, but as the fight is taking place on the feet, while it's there for her, I think she's decently active and she's decently well-rounded there. On the other hand, you have a fighter in Sam Page Hughes who seems to be like an old veteran in the game, right? Who's gets thrown in there against some of these young and up-and-comers, but she's only 32 years old. She's essentially just entering the prime of her career. She just shut down Jacqueline Amorim in her UFC debut. And Amorim, a very highly regarded prospect who was coming into the UFC there. That was a big victory for Sam Hughes. Now, she didn't do the same thing in the next fight against Yasmin Jauregui, who was another very talented young fighter. But, that's been the case for Sam Hughes here. It's been, win, loss. She had a 2-fight winning streak going on for a second there. She had a nice victory against Elise Reed. She looked really good in that fight, but note, Elise Reed is a low-level fighter. But I like the way she went out there, smashed her, finished her up via TKO down on the mat. All of her losses are pretty respectable as well. Tisha Torres, Loma Bunmi, Luana Pinheiro, Piero Rodriguez, Yasmin Jauregui, as we talked about. They're all respectable losses, and Sam Hughes has shown to be tough. She throws a nice little jab out there. She'll touch you up on the feet. She'll pop you with the jab. All in all, though, I think that Dudakova, with the reach advantage she has, the length advantage she has, and being a young fighter that's developing her skills fight to fight, I think that Dudakova will be a little bit of a step above Sam Hughes here. I think it'll play out closely. I think this fight plays out closely, but I think that Dudakova will out-volume her and have some flashy moments on the feet, somewhat flashy, but enough to steer the judges towards her way. Give me Victoria Dudakova to win a decision, and I would say that Dudakova should hope that this fight stays on the feet. I don't really want her playing the whole grappling game too much, even though, maybe I'm being a little hard on her. I didn't like some of the tape I was breaking down to her where she was on her back for some brief period of times, but she also shown little flashes. I saw her throwing some nice judo throws. She had a nice judo throw against Maria Silva, and then that DWCS fight put her on her back. She's showing little flashes with the grappling as well, but I'm not overly confident if the fight plays out like that it'll be good for her. I want her at range. So she is a minus 175 right now. This line has touched minus 155. It's touched minus 180. Okay, so some interesting line movement. Seems that no one's really, or the masses aren't really set which way they want to put their action on this fight. I think that minus 175, minus 170, anything around there is too high of a line for my liking on a women's fight like this. I think that you're doing yourself a disservice if you're attacking a line like that. Now, if it goes back to 155, maybe we could talk then, but this is a fight that I have capped a lot closer. There's a lot of questions we still have into Dudakova's game, and we have seen Sam Page go out there and show up time to time. So, it could be that type of fight where she goes out there and shows up and snags some money out of your hand. So the value is on the dog here. I slightly lean towards Dudakova to win a decision. So the only fighter on this card making their UFC debut is indeed Jordan Vucenic. He's a fighter that a lot of people have been anticipating seeing break into the octagon here. He is getting thrown right to the fire. He's taking out Guram, Kutateladze. I mean, what a welcome Guram is for anybody trying to work their way into the octagon. I mean, what a welcome party Guram will be. Yes, Guram is 1-2 as a UFC fighter, but we all know that does not define his fighting ability. He had a chain of unfortunate events take place in his last 2 fights, which we will dive into in a second. But this fight really reminds me, and we'll see how it plays out, but just looking at it right now, really reminds me of a fight we just saw that took place over in the women's flyweight division with Jasmine Jasudavicius and Fatima Klein. Now, I was on the wrong end of the stick there. I kind of changed my mind last second, and I sided with Klein. I was really impressed with some of the stuff I seen from her on the regional scene, a young, promising fighter. And I kind of turned my back on the crafty veteran who really pushes the pace and has that grappling ability. We saw that fight played out. Jasmine really she brought too much pressure and too much strength there, and she dominated. Klein had a couple moments, if you remember, in the 3rd round where she was showing to have the better striking at range, but the pressure and the wrestling was too much, and I really wonder if that's going to be the case here, because Guram has nasty wrestling. He's hungrier than ever after what just happened to him in that last fight. And as I break down tape on Vucenic, even though he looks the part and has some nasty BJJ, he has good grappling. In fact, the majority of his wins come via submission. I still don't like the fact that I've seen him have some moments in his fights where he struggled with his grappling, where he was taken down, put on his back against fighters that I have ranked or just kind of notched a lot lower level fighters compared to a Guram, which has me thinking that Guram can really have some success with his wrestling in this fight. On the feet, I do like what I've been seeing from Vucenic. He's a polished boxer, has some good pop on his shots and whatnot. He's technical there. I could see him throwing more straight shots down the pipe and landing a little bit on Guram. Guram does kind of throw looping power type of hooks. But when you mix up the whole recipe, and you just understand that Vucenic is going to be worried about stuffing takedowns and have that other aspect threatening him, I have a feeling that Guram can actually open up with his striking a little bit more. He'll whip the leg kicks and whatnot, and he'll just be a little bit more of a free and open fighter on the feet, which he can even have success there. But even if that is the case, there's no doubt about it that Guram will be much better suited to secure those takedowns and have a good amount of control time down on the mat. I think that will be crucial for him. We saw what happened to him in his last fight. That was a fight that he was up on the scorecards. He was a huge favorite on the live line, and he did start to slow down and made some defensive errors, and he was cracked by Elvis Brener. He was finished up in the third round. And Elvis Brener has since really proven to be a dangerous fighter. He had another big knockout victory after that fight. I know he had a loss after that, but against a high-level fighter in Orelbach. Listen, and just back to Guram, he is 1-2 in the UFC, but note, he had that UFC debut victory against Mateusz Gamrot, who is one of the real dark horses in this division, a very high caliber fighter. Then he lost to Damir Ismagulov. I thought that was a fight that could have went either way. Not saying robbery or whatever, but that fight was very close, if you guys remember. And Damir's a high level fighter. And then the Elvis Brener fight, again, he may have overlooked him, maybe underestimated him. He was up in that fight and eventually was cracked. But 12-4 as a pro, 1-2 in the UFC. I believe that does not define who Guram is as a fighter. All right, the Georgian Viking. You guys know that he's close with Khamzat Chimaev and whatnot, trains with him a lot. And 32 years old, he's still in his physical prime. He's a physical specimen. And I think that last loss has to have him very motivated here. But even as motivated as he is, and he should be the superior fighter, he better not put himself in a scenario where he's breathing heavily and Jordan can try to push the pace in him and try to clip him with the shot. But again, Jordan, 13 victories, though, just 2 knockouts. So not really having a lot of production with the knockouts. But when you watch him on tape, the boxing is technical. He's a decent boxer. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see some more KOs come as his career progresses, as he's starting to enter his prime. But I think you guys know which way I'm going here. I think Guram's pressure will be a lot for him to handle. So I am on Guram Kutateladze to shut down the entering hype of the newcomer here. And listen, this won't shut the door on Vucenic at all. It won't shut the door, to say the least. This won't be a bad loss. This will be a learning experience for him, and we'll see how he picks things up and moves forward from here. But in the meantime, even with this line being as Guram is a 2-1 favorite, you open up as a -210 on BetUS, he's now a -200. Even where this line is, as he's a 2-1 favorite, I still think the value is on Guram here. I think he comes in and he gets the job done. I think that he just has the experience behind him, the wrestling behind him, keep an eye on the wrestling difference here. So Guram to win via decision. We got the big boys throwing down, some real big boys here. Shamil Gaziev taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Don'Tale Mayes comes into this fight off a solid victory. He was an underdog against Chao Machado, and he went out there and did what he should have done. Machado, I'm not that high on him. And if you want to be a decently respectable fighter in this division, you got to be able to go out there and at least get your hand raised against Chao Machado. Finish would have been nice, but no finish there. Listen, Don'Tale Mayes is just 32 years old, which is just a baby in the heavyweight division. He's put in a lot of work over at Jackson Wink. We know he's trained with John Jones quite a bit. I think, in fact, he was the fighter that was working with Jones when Jones had that injury that pulled him out of that initial matchup with Stipe Miocic. So he's getting in work. He's a fighter that I would like to see get in better shape. There's no question about that. And I would say it's even more so the case for Gaziev, as Gaziev completely gassed in that fight against Rosenstruck. He essentially I mean, he was hurt in that fight as well, but he was gassing, he was breathing heavily, and it's no question why that's the case. I mean, he's carrying extra weight for sure. He's a massive human. He does some things very well in the cage as well. I've been impressed with him since his debut on Dana White's Contender Series, where he went out there, made quick work of Greg Velasco, looked good against Martin Buday. That was a solid spot to attack. If you guys remember where the line was at on that, we cashed in big there. But Rosenstruck definitely exposed him as far as Gaziev trying to work his way up and fight the elites of this division. He has a lot to work on. He's 34. He's getting up there. But remember, compared to what the heavyweight division is, 34 is not that old. So we'll see how his career progresses. We'll see what kind of run he can make. But I think that he will run in trouble, or he'll run into trouble as he works his way into the ranked heavyweights. Okay, he's never really going to be that guy, in my opinion. But I do think that he can go out there and get some solid early finishes against mediocre and lower level fighters in this division. That's kind of who Don'Tale Mayes is, right? So yeah, I am siding with Gaziev to bounce back with the victory. I like the fact that this is a 3-round fight, and he just was in a 5-round fight, even though he didn't make it, that deep into the fight. But still, he put in that work early on. As long as the fight lasted, it was just a learning experience for him, and I think he won't be as uncomfortable as the fight progresses here. And I think he could do enough to secure 2 rounds. So I do like Gaziev here. I don't say it with an overwhelming amount of confidence, also based on the fact that Don'Tale Mayes is continuing to show growth in his game. He's a scrappy dude. He has decent power. He's a little lethargic with his movement, but I mean, if he hits you, it's going to hurt. He's a scrappy dude. Don'Tale Mayes has been finished in the majority of his losses. Out of his 6 losses, KO'd in 2, subbed in 2. Gaziev is a bona fide fight finisher. 8 finishes out of his 12 victories. And I don't know, though, man. Something tells me that Don'Tale Mayes can squeak by and make it to the final bell. Something's telling me that he's going to survive to the final bell. You take a look at his last 2 losses. He was able to survive against Augusto Sakai and Rodrigo Nascimento. I could see these guys breathing heavily, and I could see the pace kind of slow down once we hit that midway point. And I'm going to say that Gaziev hangs on to win a decision here. And it may get sloppy in there. There's a lot of variables that could happen as the fight progresses. But all in all, I do feel that I got to be on Gaziev to bounce back with the victory here. Of course, the fight taking place close to where he's from, or where he's training over in Bahrain. I believe that's a pretty... it's close geographically to where the fight takes place, which is good for him. He should be decently comfortable here going in. And he's shown to have a higher ceiling, and he's shown more ability compared to what I've seen from Mayes. But just keep an eye on Mayes, man. Mayes has been grinding. Let's take a look at the betting odds, as Gaziev opened up as a -240. He did dip down and touch -260, and then it goes back the other way. So some interesting line movement here. I would have thought that immediately from that 240, it would have started to trend closer with action coming in on Mayes. Took a second for it to go that way, but that was a little interesting to me. Another thing that was interesting, I mentioned I had this fight going to a decision. This fight is favored for us to see a finish. Okay, the under is the pretty heavy favorite there. So I think that there is a realistic possibility that this goes to the judges' scorecard. So that's something to keep an eye on. As far as value goes, we'll probably talk more about that when we do the prop video. But as far as money line value on Gaziev, I don't see it. There would have to be a lot of action continue to come in on Mayes for me to be touching him. I think the value is on Don'Tale Mayes for sure here. And Don'Tale Mayes right now, he's a plus 195 on BetUS. I mean, you're getting almost 2-to-1 odds there in a fight that it should be much closer, man. You shouldn't have an extreme amount of confidence in Gaziev, especially if things don't go well for him early on in the fight, right off the rip. He's shown some mental issues in there. So we'll see how the fight goes.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
So we got a lightweight matchup here between Mohammad, Yahya, and Kauê Fernandes. Now, one thing that I try not to do is be disrespectful. These days when I do prediction videos, I know when I first used to do them, I used to be a little bit, maybe you could call me immature, a little bit more smart-mouthed on the mic, even though, I still have my moments here and there. But one thing I've learned is just you got to respect all these dudes for doing what they do. But I have major question marks in regards to Mohammad Yahya fighting in the UFC, fighting in the octagon. I have a feeling that he's been getting these opportunities based on the fact that the UFC is making a big push to grow the sport in that area. And obviously they have great connections to a lot of people over in Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates. And Muhammad Yahya is a respectable name as far as MMA fighters go from that neck of the woods. Obviously there's not a large pool of fighters from the area that actually are from there and train there. Now, Muhammad Yahya, he just doesn't impress me when I break down tape on him. He definitely didn't impress me in his fight against Trevor Peek. And Trevor Peek is a fighter that I love to watch fight, right, with his exciting style. But Trevor Peek was doing things in that fight that weren't even what Trevor Peek is really all about. It wasn't like Peek went out there like a chicken with his head cut off and was blasting him with big shots, which he had some moments here and there. But I mean, he was out grappling Yahya. He was looking like GSP out there, controlling him down in the mat for almost 6 minutes, over a round in that fight. And I think that Yahya is not battle tested. He's fought very low level competition, and it's going to be hard for me to side with him against anybody, with him fighting against anybody in the UFC, right, under the UFC banner, because for the most part, UFC fighters are going to be respectable fighters, the best of the world as far as mixed martial artists goes. Now, Kauê Fernandes fell short in his UFC debut, but it was against Mark Diakese, who is a lot more of a proven fighter compared to Trevor Peek. If Mark Diakese was to fight Trevor Peek, Diakese would take him down. He would control him probably for who knows, it could be 15 minutes from the second the bell rings. I mean, Diakese has just been such a lackluster fighter. He goes out there and really implements the grappling. I got to give him credit as far as that goes. He's good at it. And he was able to do that against Kauê Fernandes. But I don't think that necessarily showed that Kauê Fernandes is a bad fighter. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I heard that he's gotten a lot of extensive training with Jose Aldo since he was very young, training over there under head coach Andre Pederneiras, training at Nova União. Obviously, he surrounds himself with some very high-level fighters, and I just think that he's going to prove to be the better fighter. Okay, so I think he's going to get his first UFC victory here. Now, for any of you guys that were looking to break down tape on this fight, if you were headed over to YouTube, I'm sure some of you guys may have been scratching your head because his brother is, I believe, Kauê Fernandes, who looks very similar, but he has the neck tattoo and the sleeve and all that. So if some of you were watching tape and you're thinking that's Kauê Fernandes here, and then you're saying, oh, what, did he get a tattoo removal or something, or were those fake tattoos? Just to kind of clear that up if you're kind of scratching your head there. But Fernandes is a scrappy striker. He's willing to throw down on the feet. I think he'll get the better of the striking exchanges, and I don't think that Muhammad Yahya is going to be able to go out there and exploit the grappling of Fernandes like Mark Diakese was. In fact, Muhammad Yahya is a striking-based fighter for the most part, I would say. The majority of his victories have come by way of knockout against low-level fighters. He doesn't really have a lot of pop on his strikes, if you ask me. I don't see him clipping Kauê Fernandes here, and I think Fernandes will just be a step ahead as the fight goes. Will Fernandes find the finish? I think that's more of the question that we have to ask ourselves here. He's a fighter that out of his 8 victories, he's had 6 finishes, even has a couple subs there as well. Muhammad Yahya has been finished 3 of his 4 losses. Obviously, I've been kind of ranting how I'm not that high on him. I'm going to say that Fernandes gets a finish here. I'm going to say it can either come by way of knockout or sub. He may hurt him and then maybe goes down to the mat and sets up a sub. But, I think I kind of have to lean towards a finish as I hopped on the mic and kind of disrespected Yahya to the extent that I did. And hopefully I wasn't disrespectful. If you're listening, Yahya, I know, maybe Yahya tunes in to the show. You never know, but probably not. But I'm going to say Kauê Fernandes gets a finish in here in this fight, just being a higher level fighter. I think he rises to the occasion here, and maybe he ends up proving to be a respectable fighter in the octagon. And I just think it's more of a far-fetched statement to say that Yahya ends up being that fighter. But the line here, he opened up as a minus 335. If you could have caught it then, that's a nice little parlay piece. But, it's getting up there. He's a minus 410. That's a risky leg, if you ask me, just for the fact that we need to see more from Fernandes. That's just a high line. I don't really want to push you guys that way, but obviously I think I made it clear that I wouldn't have a problem with you if you look to fade Muhammad Yahya here. In the light heavyweight division, we have Alonzo Menifield, the number 15th ranked fighter in this division, taking on the number 14th ranked fighter in Azamat Murzakanov. Murzakanov, a fighter that I've liked to refer to as Pluto from Popeye, although when I gave him that name, he did have a little bit of spinach on top of the head. Nowadays, he's looking, kind of like who's the dude from the Addams family. A little bit more of that syndrome going on there, Uncle Fester syndrome. But Azamat Murzakanov is a very dangerous fighter. Do not think just because he won a decision in his last fight that he is not a fight finisher. 9 of his 13 victories have come by way of KO, including every single victory under the UFC banner. Besides that last one against Jacoby, knocked out Devin Clark, knocked out Tefan Nchukwi, which was a nice comeback knockout victory. In fact, I believe he was down in the scorecards. He should have lost the first round in the second round, if I remember correctly. In fact, that was the case. Came back with that finish that he needed. Had the knockout in the first round on Dana White's Contender Series over Matthias Scheffel, who's now in the PFL or was in the PFL. So he did have a decision victory in his last fight, which I thought was a good showing of himself. He went out there and he outstruck Dustin Jacoby tit for tat, which is something that Alonzo Menifield can't say that he did, right? When they fought, although Menifield was able to get that decision victory over Jacoby, which I did not think was the right decision, if I'm being honest. I thought that was not a robbery. I just thought that Jacoby won that fight. Jacoby was piecing him up that entire fight, completely outlanding him. And then there was those couple rounds there where Menifield clipped him with a big shot, dropped him, and was snagged up a round, or debatably snagged up that round. But Jacoby was the superior fighter, tit for tat. And Murzakanov has showed that not only can he go out there and knock you out, but he can hang with you there and he can outstrike you even if he doesn't get that knockout, especially recently, right? He's been showing that growth in his game. He's not just a knockout artist like we saw in the Nchukwi fight. Okay, Azamat Murzakanov has good grappling. I think he's going to be a step ahead of Menifield here. I also don't like the fact that Menifield comes into this fight after being knocked out very early. That was against Carlos Olberg. That fight took place very recently, so I kind of wonder where his mental's at. I wonder where his confidence is at. And I think when he has the kind of physically imposing Murzakanov pressuring him and who has that underrated burst, he's kind of light on his feet fighting out of the southpaw stance, and then he explodes on you and has really nasty power. I don't think Menifield's going to like it. And in fact, I have Menifield getting knocked out here. I have him getting TKO'd. I have him getting caught in this fight. I will say this, Menifield is an extremely dangerous fighter himself, so if Murzakanov is not on his P's and Q's and he gets overly aggressive, don't be shocked if Menifield clips him with the counter shot, but I do expect it to be Murzakanov that knocks out Menifield. I think that's a way more likely scenario. Menifield has a nice little 5-inch reach advantage, about a 4.5-5-inch reach advantage. I just don't see the fight playing out like that. I don't see Menifield fighting at range, using that reach advantage and landing at the end of his shots. I think the distance will be closed and we will see some big shots landed in this fight. And it screams Murzakanov being the fighter that does what he has been doing throughout his career, just catching dudes. Okay, so and Murzakanov's last fight, just to mention, took place in April of 2023. So it's been a year and 4 months or so, almost a year and a half. It's been a while since he's been in there. I do believe he's been battling some injuries and whatnot, but I think he's all healed up and ready to go. And I think he bounces back with a victory here, and we'll see how far he can make a run in this division. But the time is now. He's 35. He needs to get the ball rolling. And let's take a look at the betting odds. Azamat Murzakanov opened up as a -185 on BetUS, and he's now a -223. So some pretty heavy action coming in at Murzakanov. Where the line is right now, man, this is another one. Listen, I can only tell you what I'm seeing here, guys. So if it's not the most exciting card where I'm telling you, yeah, we got value here, we got value there, we got value here, it is what it is. I mean, I think you could be putting yourself in trouble for sure when you're reaching on a line like this against a fighter in Alonzo Menifield. That's a dangerous dude. He's a stud athlete. And on the other side of things, we talk about Azamat. Remember now, Menifield's very hungry to bounce back with the victory. He's obviously very disappointed in the way that last fight played out. And you can't overlook that aspect of this matchup as well. But with that being said, I think Azamat gets him out of there. I think he knocks him out. But as far as value on the money line, not really. And maybe you can get a specific method of victory or something like that, or maybe an under, or maybe you can find some value there. We'll talk about that soon. We got yet another lightweight matchup on this card, quite a few of them. Joel Alvarez taking on Elvis Brener. This is a high-level fight here. Very excited for this one. Joel Alvarez was really making some noise in the UFC. He was on quite a winning streak going into that Arman Tsarukyan fight. That was a big one at the time. If you remember, the winner of that fight was really going to come out of it with some big time momentum. Arman Tsarukyan bloodied him up, ground and pounded him. He hurt him very bad in that fight. And he showed to be the superior fighter. Of course, you know Arman Tsarukyan is the truth, but you gotta love the way that Joel Alvarez bounced back in that next fight against Mark Diakase. He pulled off the Darce choke there in the second round, I believe it was. And once again showed that he's a very tricky jiu-jitsu player. He's very crafty down the mat, but he's also been working on his striking. He obviously has a lot of length to work with, right? He's a very tall fighter for this division, has a huge frame. And in the Diakase fight, you have to love the way he maneuvered into finding that choke, as he was kind of out of position, and Diakase shot in, and he kind of scrambled up like a cat and just caught Diakase in that front choke there and wiggled it into a Darce. So it was very, very high level. Joel Alvarez will be the fighter that's more likely to pull off a submission if we see a sub in this fight. Take note though, Elvis Brener never subbed, never knocked out either. He's never been finished. But if we do see a sub, I think it will come by the way of Alvarez. If we see a TKO or knockout in this fight, it's going to come by way of Elvis Brener. Okay, so I feel strongly about that. But here's the X factor. If it goes to a decision, who do I see getting their hand raised? Because believe it or not, I actually do think this is a fight that's going to go to the judges' scorecards. I'm going to say that Joel Alvarez, with the length that he has, can slightly get the better of Brener as far as outpointing him, but he's going to face some serious danger there as well. And Brener throws very heavy leg kicks, but I like the way Alvarez looks on the feet. He's very athletic, checks leg kicks very well. He'll be turning that leg out. He'll look to check those kicks, and I could see him kind of countering Brener and outpointing him. Remember, Brener took a lot of damage early on in that Guram fight that we talked about, but he showed his durability, and he eventually worked his way into finding a big counter shot and breaking Guram down. Could he do something similar here to Alvarez? Potentially, yes. Like I said, if I see a TKO, I could see it coming by way of Brener. And check out Joel Alvarez over here to the side of me, chilling with the old lady. Got the kids in the back. Looks like he has another kid here living in the camper or whatever he's doing, but I thought that was a funny picture there. But Alvarez really is a good fighter. Fighting out of Spain, obviously there's not a lot of big names representing Spain. No, we have Ilia Topuria, but as a whole, there's not a stable of fighters representing Spain. But Joel Alvarez is one of those fighters that can look to lead the way there. Hasn't been extremely active throughout the last couple of years or so, but still just 31 years old. That's plenty of time to make some noise in this division. And I will side with Joel Alvarez to win a decision here. But remember, I told you, if we see the sub, comes by way of Alvarez. If we see a knockout finish in this fight, it will be way of Elvis Brener. And something else I do want to talk about here, which makes Elvis Brener very dangerous, is he's just 26 years old. If you take a look at some of the losses that he's had entering the UFC, because as I think that is partly the reason why he was such an underdog, and all of his UFC fights, really, right? Or at least besides his most recent fights, the first two UFC fights against Tukhugov and Guram, he was such a massive underdog. It's because you take a look at his resume and you're like, oh, this dude's going out there losing quite often. And not just the Gabriel Santos loss, because we know Santos is a talented prospect, but the other two losses against Denis Silva and Sergey Andreev, I mean, these were some questionable losses, especially the Andreev fight, because that was a fighter that doesn't really have the most respectable resume. But the point I'm making here is that Elvis Brener is just 26 years old, training over at Shootbox with Charles Oliveira and all those boys. So you understand that his level of skill is going to quickly heighten. He's going to start to look better and better very fast. And that's what we've seen from him in his last four fights. So that's a dangerous aspect for Brener, because if he continues to excel with this game, he could quickly match a level of Joel Alvarez, or maybe he surpasses him. He goes out there and shows to be the superior fighter. That's the dangerous aspect of this fight. We also know that Brener is an absolute dog, so he's not going to just wilt in there. You're going to really have to do something to get the W here. You know, Joel Alvarez has to really pull out some tricks. Maybe he pulls off a sub, or just has to be on his bike using his athleticism and his footwork to outpoint Brener, because Brener will continuously march him down and look to hammer those calf kicks. And if Joel Alvarez starts to slow down or starts to wilt in there, he could get broken and finished. But I'm going to take Joel Alvarez. I don't say it with a lot of confidence. I've liked Joel, though. I've really liked him for a while now, and I hope that he continues to have success in the cage. I like Brener as well, but still, Alvarez is a fighter that I've been high on. And he opened up as a -19 favorite, if you will. Very, very slight favorite. This fight opened up at pick-em odds, essentially. A lot of action has come in on Alvarez. He's now -185, so I think that does say something. When you see a fighter getting steamed like that, I think there is something behind it. That's something to keep an eye on. At this point in time, not a lot of value on that line. Sorry, guys. I'm saying it again, but I'm just giving you what I see here. Not a lot of value on that line. In fact, the value is on the dog and Brener. That's just what it is. I don't want to lead you guys to be targeting a -190, -185 line on Alvarez. And I'm not even really going to steer you guys towards the sub prop play, because I don't know if he finds it. Maybe a decision play. I don't know. This is not a good fight to bet. This is more of a fight, in my opinion, that you're sitting back and you're watching and enjoying the matchup here. It should be a fun one, but Brener is a dangerous fighter. Ranked strawweight action, Mackenzie Dern, ranked number 7, taking on number 10, Lupi Garinez. Lupi comes into this fight off a very frustrating loss, right? She lost to Verna Jandiroba. Shout out to Verna, who just came through in the main event for us on an official play. She was slightly an underdog. She's been a fighter that's been very underrated throughout her career. We know she does some things very well, and she was able to have success against Lupi with the BJJ skills. And even though Lupi has that strong wrestling pedigree, she did struggle a little bit late in that fight. There was some crucial moments where the BJJ kind of got her there. Another thing I will say going against Lupi is she's shown to make some bad or some questionable fight IQ decisions when she's in the cage. And that's risky here because Mackenzie Dern is an extremely high-level BJJ player. I do not want to see Lupi trying to engage with the wrestling at all. At all. I want her to keep this fight standing. I know Mackenzie Dern just looked pretty sharp on the feet against Angela Hill back in 2023, right? Middle of 2023. It seems like it was just yesterday. It's crazy, but somehow she looked very good in that fight. She looked better than ever as far as her striking goes. But look what happened in the next 2 fights. Okay, that's alarming. How do you take that setback after showing some growth there? When initially, even before the Angela Hill fight, I've always had major question marks in regards to Mackenzie Dern's striking. It's atrocious if you ask me for the most part. And I think that Lupi Garinez can get the better of the striking exchanges. I think that she has a little pop on her in her hands. She has some solid boxing, and I could see her hurting Mackenzie Dern on the feet. I want her to use her wrestling to break off and create space and to look to pop Mackenzie Dern up on the feet. I think that she's more suited to get a W that way. At least if they do get sweaty and they're slippery in there, maybe if the fight goes down to the mat, Lupi will be a little bit less at risk, but it will be dangerous there too, because if she's kind of tired and she slips in a banana peel and puts herself in a vulnerable position, Mackenzie Dern's so high level, she may find that sub there. I don't want to see Lupi down on the mat. I won't say it's completely out of the realm if the fight does go to the mat, that maybe Lupi can survive there using her wrestling and trying to avoid subs. Take note that Lupi has never been subbed. In fact, Lupi has never been finished. She's a very, very tough chick. All right, so she's never been knocked out or subbed. But you don't want to play that game with Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, 7 submission victories out of her 13 wins. When she's getting finishes, it is via submission. There's no question about that. I'm siding with Lupi here. I am. I'm siding with Lupi Garinez. I'm going to say that she bounces back after that frustrating loss that she just had. I think she's extremely motivated. She's just 30 years old, right? 30 years old in the prime of her career, or entering the prime of her career. She's still learning. All right, she has 16 pro fights. She's going to learn from some of the mistakes that she made in that John D. Roba fight. Needs to create space. She can take a lot from that last fight and bring it into this fight here, okay? And I've been a dude that's just continuously faded Mackenzie Dern throughout her UFC career. I have nothing against her, but I have, and it's paid off for me. And in fact, one of the times it didn't pay off for me, I feel very strongly that she lost to Tisha Torres. I was there for that fight. I was down by the cage for that fight, very close, had great seats, and I know she lost that fight. Go rewatch the tape. Go check the scorecards. Go check verdict and all the media scorecard said for that fight, because everyone, for the most part, had Tisha Torres winning that fight. So you could definitely classify that as a robbery if you ask me. And if she would have lost that fight, you're talking about her losing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of her last 6 fights, although it is against high-level competition. But I'm going to side with Lupi here. I think that Lupi can create enough space to do what she needs to do standing. I know that Dern has a 2-inch reach advantage. Lupi has good footwork, though. She can work her way in and out and kind of pop Dern up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dern falter her back a couple times, getting hit with some shots. And this is a tough fight, but I will side with Lupi. I will do what I continuously do, which is fade Mackenzie Dern. And I do know that she has high-level BJJ, though, and she could do something once in a while that will make you frustrated if you fade her. But Lupita Godinez opened up as a -115 on BetUS. This line opened up at pick'em odds. We see some slight action coming in on Dern. Right now, Lupita Godinez is right around even odds. I've seen her like +105 a little bit here and there. And I think there's more value on Lupita Godinez. I think she wins the fight straight up anyway. I'm going to lean towards a decision. But if we did see a finish, obviously if it's a sub, it's coming by way of Dern. If we do see a TKO stoppage or something like that, it's for Lupi. Maybe we see a little bit more growth with the boxing skills, and maybe we see Dern bloodied up, and eventually Lupi can find a TKO victory in this fight. But to be clear, I'm leaning towards a decision victory for Lupi Godinez. Tony El Kukui Ferguson, the former Ultimate Fighter contestant, Michael Chiesa, the former Ultimate Fighter contestant. These guys have been around for quite some time. Polarizing names in the game. Chiesa working with the broadcast team these days, does a good job there. Tony Ferguson, right? I mean, what do you need me to explain anything else about Tony Ferguson? He's so loved by the fans, and it's understandable. Ever since he joined the UFC, he became a very likable character. But if you remember on The Ultimate Fighter, he was far from a likable character. In fact, I couldn't stand him on the show. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, he was going after fighters on the show, talking about their kids and stuff. There was a dude that was separated from the mom, and he was making fun of him. He wasn't there for his kids when the dude really wanted to be there for his kid or whatever. I mean, it was pretty sick. It was sadistic. He was all drunk. You could see the demons that flowed in him on that show. But since the Ultimate Fighter times, he really channeled all that energy in a positive way in the cage, and that's why people have gravitated towards El Kukui. And I always love watching Tony fight. I always have. I think this is most likely going to be the last time that we see Tony Ferguson fight, or at least in the UFC. Maybe he still continues to try to do something else outside the UFC. Wouldn't be shocked there. He obviously has no quit in him. He's now on a hell of a losing streak. Okay, he's lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row. Okay. I understand some of them are against high level competition. Right? You know, when the trains fell off the tracks, it was against big fighters and big time positions, right? Against Keiichi, Charles Oliveira, and then Dariush, Chandler, Diaz, Green, Pimblett. The level of competition slowly kind of went down though. And I mean, I guess you could say he looked decent against Patty in the 3rd round there, but he's 40 years old. Is he really going to go out there and get a W over Michael Chiesa, 36-year-old Michael Chiesa, who obviously has the connections with the UFC? He set himself up He set himself up in a solid way getting this fight. I think this is a great fight for Chiesa, who, you get a name like Tony Ferguson under your belt, you get another W under your belt, you're up there in the broadcast booth. It's a good move for him, right? Because he's coming into this fight on a 3-fight losing streak as well. So he wants to get a W inside the octagon. Very bad. At least when you take a look at his recent losses, I mean, Kevin Holland, Sean Brady's very high level. Vicente Luque, that fight took place 3 years ago. Luque had a little bit left in the tank. And then before that, though, he was doing his thing out there, man. Chiesa was on a 3-fight winning streak. I thought that the Neil Magny victory was a very impressive one. I think that was a fight that took place I think that fight may have took place in Abu Dhabi. It took place somewhere, in the other side of the world. And he went out there, he showed up and looked great on that night. The RDA victory, Carlos Condit submission he had back in 2018. He's had his ups and downs, man. Victories over Beneil Dariush and Jim Miller. He's definitely had some big victories. He has very long limbs. He's a great grappler. I don't know if he's going to find a sub on Tony Ferguson here, though. Tony is very hard to sub. If anything, I could see him using some grappling to eventually maybe work a TKO on Tony, just kind of battering the old 40-year-old weathered Tony Ferguson. I have Michael Chiesa winning this fight. And let's just note, right, out of Tony's recent losses, he has been finished in a fair amount of them, but he's also survive to the judges' scorecards too. He's shown some toughness and durability. You guys remember the subs that he locked in against Charles Oliveira, even Dariush. I mean, he refused to tap in those fights. His limbs were completely bending back, and he survived against Paddy. Paddy got a big W against Bobby last weekend, and he survived in that fight. And like I said earlier, looked good in the third round. I'm going to say that Tony survives here, and this fight goes to the judges' scorecards where Chiesa will be up on the judges' scorecards and will have some crucial moments. I'm going to say that Tony survives. I do not say that with a lot of confidence, but I do pick Michael Chiesa to win this fight with a good amount of confidence. I say he gets the job done. Let's go take a look at the betting odds on this fight. Oof, look at this. Chiesa is a -610. He opened up as a -410 on BetUS. Okay, he's a big-time favorite. In fact, I believe he is the biggest favorite on the card. Okay, guys, so what are you going to do with that? Obviously, I think you'd be targeting a specific method of victory. We could maybe dive into that fight on that episode later in the week, but this is what I recommend, man. I strongly recommend you don't touch this fight, and if anything, you maybe throw some couple pennies out of your piggy bank on Tony Ferguson, which you probably shouldn't even do that, but you root for Tony Ferguson to get a W in the octagon, and maybe he gets a finish. That'd be crazy. We could all celebrate it, have fun on online. We'll have fun on IG at MMA Fortune Teller _. We'll post some memes and all that type of stuff. We'll have some fun with an El Cucuy victory, but I don't think it's likely to happen. Marlon Chito Vera, the number 4th ranked bantamweight fighter, taking on the number 6th ranked Devison Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion. He's came up in weight. He's been successful. He's 2-0 in this division. This would be a huge feather in his cap. If he can go out there and get a victory over Vera, Figueiredo, like I said earlier, he'll be right in the mix of working his way towards a title shot. Now, the main event winner, like I said, I think they will be the leader to make a run at that next title shot, but Figueiredo will be right in the mix. This is a huge fight for him. And now I'm going to cut right to the chase. Figueiredo, what worries me as I'm breaking down tape on some of Figueiredo's most recent fights is that last fight that he had against Brandon Moreno, where he looked so good in the fight with Moreno before that, but I didn't like the way he looked in that Moreno fight. It's almost like he was mentally out of it. He got hit with some big shots. I know he was hurt in that fight too, but he kind of wilted in that fight, and I have Marlon Chito Vera a step ahead of a Brandon Moreno. Obviously, they're in different weight classes and whatnot, but Chito's a bigger fighter. He's a dangerous striker, and I think that when you're in the cage, whether or not you're not cutting as much weight and you're a little bit more of yourself when you're across the cage from a Marlon Chito Vera compared to a Brandon Moreno, I think that that's more of an issue, okay? Especially a motivated a Marlon Chito Vera who's coming off a loss against Sean O'Malley. In fact, he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, but against high-level fighters. He lost to Sean O'Malley, like I said, had a victory over Pedro Munoz before that, and he lost to Cory Sandhagen, which it was a split decision loss. I'm throwing up in my mouth right now the fact that one of the judges gave that fight to Marlon. But if you remember, I've actually shed some light on that situation. The judge had a beef with Cory Sandhagen. Cory Sandhagen actually cursed him out when he was a referee one time, and he was reffing one of Cory's students' fights, and they had a verbal altercation, and it's disgusting that that judge should never be able to judge a fight again. He actually scored that for Vera when Sandhagen arguably won every single round, a 5-round fight. Maybe you could have gave one to Vera, but let me get off that subject because I'll start ranting on that. I just think that Marlon Chito Vera is very motivated, looks to be in good shape here. And if Marlon shows up and he's on his P's and Q's, I think that this could be a possible upset spot, all right? Because Figueiredo is the favorite. We're going to get to the line in a second. But the more I watch tape on Figueiredo, man, especially in his recent fights, man, this dude is just such an explosive athlete. I love the way he moves, man. He's so quick in there. And I feel like he's looked good at bantamweight. I think that he's filled in a little bit, and just with that speed that he has in there, man, he looks good. And the wrestling abilities that he's shown even at this weight class, I mean, he looks dominant there, even using the wrestling and changing levels. Obviously, he's an explosive striker as well, but went in there against Rob Font, handled business, completely outclassed Cody Garbrandt. And I know Cody is a shell of himself to an extent, doesn't have the chin, but the way he was even out grappling him and out muscling him in there, I thought that was impressive to do that up in the bantamweight division against a former bantamweight champion. And I'm on Figueiredo here. I just think that Figueiredo is the more complete fighter. One thing that I don't like about Marlon throughout the years is that he has very low output in his fights. And even though it says he's landing 4.31 strikes per minute, I don't know if that really sums him up as a fighter, man. When I'm watching tape on him, excuse me, I'll try to get that so you guys can see it. But when I'm watching tape on him, man, this is a fighter that is stagnant. He looks for those big shots at times. And it's interesting because Figueiredo is a similar fighter, only landing 3 strikes per minute. But I'm willing to say that it'll be Figueiredo that puts a higher output on the feet in this fight. I'm actually willing to say that here. And I'll take the speed that Figueiredo has. And I'll be interested to see if he could look to change levels and use some grappling against Vera. It's not easy to do. Vera with a 70% takedown defensive rate in the UFC is not easy to take down, but Figueiredo looked pretty damn good there in his last fight. He's very physically strong. We'll see how that plays out. But all in all, I have Deiveson Figueiredo just being a step ahead here and securing 2 rounds at least. Maybe Vera snags 1. He's still 31 years old. There's a lot left to give the game. Figueiredo, 36. He's getting up there in age, but still looks like he has plenty to offer the game. And he's trying to make a run at this title. He wants to be a champion, or he wants to have been a champion in 2 weight classes. I see the motivation there. I think it's enough to push him past Marlon Vera here. Marlon Vera will look to counter with that one big strike. And if he doesn't land that big strike that shakes this fight up, I think Figueiredo kind of takes control and pushes his way towards a decision victory. How am I going to say Figueiredo's going to get a finish when Marlon Chito Vera, his chin is, you talk about granite, it's absolute granite. Remember that front kick that he took from Sean O'Malley? Or the knee, I'm sorry, it was a knee. Remember that step-in knee? You can't knock him out. If anything, maybe you could sub him, but he's never been subbed either. Maybe Figueiredo can find a sub somehow, hurt him and sub him, but no. Decision victory for Deiveson Figueiredo here, and then he'll really be making some noise in this division. So there'll be a lot of exciting matchups to make with Figueiredo. Like I said, I want to see him take on Petr Yan after he gets a W here. Figueiredo opened up as a -170 on BetUS and is now a -160. A little up and down action. He did touch 180. At -160, you monitor that line and try to be on your P's and Q's there. See if you can catch that coming down. Maybe you can catch it at 150, 145. I would not be shocked if there's an opportunity for that line to be snagged up around there, because I think that we could start to see some action come in on Chito and the line closes a little bit more so. And that would be the route you want to go. Try to get even more of a bargain on that line if you're going after it.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
In the middleweight division, we got the Bullet stepping into the cage. Once again, he's taking on Michał Oleksiejczak. Isn't that funny? Because I was just saying after Shara's last victory that he just had a couple of weeks back, right? How long ago was that fight against Antonio Trocoli? That fight took place, like a month ago, just over a month ago. It's crazy. Had the knockout victory. We heard about the fact that he is not going to be able to fight in the States due to his situation with his visa, whatever's going on with him behind the scenes. And it kind of made me just feel that he's never going to be in a situation to get those big fights, right, at the top of this division if he could ever round his overall game out with the grappling and whatnot. Maybe I was wrong there, because the UFC may start going out to this neck of the woods so often that he could just fight out there and defend the belt out there as often as they're going to be putting fights on over there. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Maybe he can really make some noise here. I'm very high in his striking, and we all know that his striking is nasty. It's so fluid. It's so dangerous. Well, you could kind of say the same thing for Michał as well. His boxing is very smooth. Fighting out of the southpaw stance, man, good footwork. He works the body. I mean, he'll pepper you up. He'll hurt you there. Remember, he used to fight up in the light heavyweight division, and he had some success up there against fighters that were much larger than him. He's came down to the middleweight division. I feel that was the right move for sure, but he's definitely had some down performances even in this weight class. He's very vulnerable to being submitted. Okay, and actually, you know what? Pause for a second. We'll talk about the submissions in a second. That part of his aspect. The big narrative going into this fight, let me jump right to it. I'm sure a lot of you guys seen it on social media. It's been going all around Instagram. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, MMA_fortune_. But the thing that we're hearing is that there was this comment where somebody said about, what would happen if he loses, and his response was very passive. He just said, it's just sport and I don't really care. Or if I lose, it's not a big deal. I'm done with sports anyway. Like, he's kind of over training and putting in that work. Even though if you follow him on IG, it looks like he's getting that work with the boys and he's still somewhat dedicated, but seems like there's something going on outside the cage. So you have to question his mental. But now back to the sub issue that he's had. Shara Nurmagomedov is a fighter that has 0 subs, and he hasn't really shown anything with the grappling. So that's huge here. That makes this fight so much more exciting because there's not going to be that aspect of Oleksiejczak getting hurt and then subbed, all right? Because we don't see Oleksiejczak get knocked out. In fact, he hasn't been knocked out for a very long time. It's been years, and the last knockout loss that he took was against a fellow countryman, right? It was that Polish fighter. It was against a Marcin Woszak. That was the last time he took a knockout. That was in 2014 at MMA. Okay, so I mean, since then, he's shown to be durable. I mean, he gets hurt a little here and there, but he doesn't get finished via strikes. I'm interested to see if Nurmagomedov can do that. I'll say that he can do that. In fact, I have Nurmagomedov getting a knockout TKO victory in this fight. So we'll see that 1 go to 2 there for Michal. I question his mental. And Nurmagomedov was just in there. He'll be ready to go, and he's just so nasty and fluid with the striking. I think he'll put Oleksiejczak in a situation where we'll see Oleksiejczak look for a way out, and I think that Nurmagomedov gets a knockout in this fight. So let's see where the odds are for this fight. He opened up as a -255. He's now -225, which is, I would want to see that. Now he's at 230, a little up and down there. Oh no, he's back to 225. That's what I would want to see. I would hope that line continues to trend that way. You can get Shera under 200. That would be great if you can get that. And I think the reason why the line's going that way is because people are not seeing the avenue of the submission threat against Oleksiejczak, and then he has a lot of MMA experience, and maybe he can put Shera in a situation where he can, kind of show some holes in Shera's game. Maybe he can get on top of him, use some grappling. Oleksiejczak with 28 professional fights compared to the 13 of Shara, but Shara with a lot of kickboxing experience. I think that Shara will be too much for him on the feet, and they're going to exchange, and he's going to finish him. Hey guys, Teller, hopping in your ear real quick. Just want to remind you guys, if you want to work with me with my official plays, reach out to me. I'll give you further information there. And if you guys can, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, catch me on all my social media, go follow me on IG. I got it all posted right below there. Got my Twitter. Means the world to me, guys. Thank you. To the main event. What a high level matchup this is. Cory Sandhagen, number 2 in the division, taking on the number 10th ranked Umar Nurmagomedov. You guys know though that number 10 doesn't really explain who Umar is as a fighter. We all know him as one of the most dangerous and complete fighters in this division. I feel a lot of people have him as the champion. I mean, I'm sure maybe you don't feel like that, but there's a lot of people that feel they would take Umar Nurmagomedov over Merab, Sean O'Malley, and Cory Sandhagen here, okay? He's a very complete fighter. He's very good at what he does. And then on the other hand, Cory Sandhagen, he is just so high level himself, man. He's a sniper. He's such a sharp shooter when it comes to his striking. Extreme fight IQ. When you're talking about fight IQ, you're talking about one of the highest level fight IQ fighters in the game. If you haven't caught him on the Joe Rogan Experience, go check it out. I mean, this dude analyzes the game from all aspects. He lives and breathes MMA, and you've seen the development in his grappling too. He's talked about it. When he took that loss to Aljamain Sterling, I mean, he really knew he needed to work on some things and figure some things out. And then look at the grappling that he's doing now in the cage. I mean, he's dominating dudes down on the mat. Now, you take a look at his last fight. He had Rob Font on his back for almost 25 minutes. It was crazy the way he was working the jiu-jitsu too. Rob Font's active with his BJJ, and Sandhagen just shut everything down and wouldn't let him up. Before that, he had a dominant victory over Marlon Vera. That was another 5-round fight. We talked about what one of the judges did. It was disgusting. Dominated that fight, showing that he could outstrike a high-level striker like Marlon Vera. The victory over Song Yadong, that was a fight that was very impressive to me as well. Song that dude's moving in the matrix. He's a very high-level fighter. Okay, so a couple losses before that, but learning experiences for him, and I just think that Cory is hitting on all cylinders right now. He is in his prime, 32 years old. This is a dude that has his mind set on the gold, and it's hard to say that he's not going to get there. But the top of the mountain here, man, it's high level. When you talk about Umar, Merab, Sean O'Malley, I mean, he's going to have to try to get past some of those names to grab that gold. I mean, starts here with Umar. I mean, can he shut down Umar? Can he give Umar his first loss? I think it's going to be hard to do. If there's somebody that can go out there and hand Umar Nurmagomedov his first loss, he's 28 years old, he's 17-0. If there's someone that could do it right now, why not Cory Sandhagen? He's a very complete fighter. And if you have some question marks in regards to Umar, I mean, I'm sure some of you guys were not happy with the way he went to a decision against a fighter in Beksat Almakan, who was taking that fight on short notice. Before that, he knocked out Raoni Barcelos, a very old Raoni Barcelos. Went to a decision with Nate Maness before that. But, went out there, got to give props where props is due. Submitted one of my old arch nemesis. We won't even mention his name. All right, I'll leave it for you guys to mention. Go to the comment section and we could talk about the retirement of who. All right, but I'm just poking some fun there. But I mean, he was finishing fights left and right before that, but not levels on, or not fighters on the level of a Cory Sandhagen. But you also have to take note, Umar's level of fighting is going to go up and up because he's just 28 years old, and look who he surrounds himself with. You guys know who he surrounds himself with, all right? Guys like Islam Makhachev and all those high-level Dagestani fighters, obviously Khabib and all that. And this is such a tough fight for me to really put my finger on, but I do have a strong feeling as far as the betting line goes. I really wanted to pick Cory Sandhagen to win this fight because I just think that he's very live. He's more proven, and I think that he's just peaking as a fighter. He's really in his prime, and I think that maybe if there was a time you could defeat Umar, maybe it's right now while he's 28. Maybe he makes a mistake in there, and Cory can capitalize on that. I can't do it though. My job here is to pick the fights correct at the end of the day. I mean, obviously we can analyze the value, but I want to pick who's going to win the fight correct at the end of the day, and I can't pick against Umar Nurmagomedov. Fight taking place in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, they all want him to win over there, and he's just a physical specimen. He's so well-rounded, and maybe we see Umar, rewind the clock a little bit and do something similar to what we saw Aljamain Sterling do to Cory. But I really believe that Cory sharpened things up since then, so I don't really see that being the case. But maybe Umar's just a little stronger in there. Maybe he clips Cory with the big shot. I don't know, man. This is a close fight, but at the end of the day, I do know that I got to lean towards Umar Nurmagomedov's way. I just think he's the truth. I just don't think that the winning streak stops right now. I think that he works his way to becoming the champion. All right, so I'll be on record saying that right now. I think that Umar, it will get the better. If you put that a tournament style or bracket, I think he gets the better of Sean O'Malley for sure with the wrestling. I think he gets the better of Merab, being just a more complete fighter, and I think that he can get a W here against Cory Sandhagen. But they're all very high level, and you never know. We'll see how it plays out. But give me Umar Nurmagomedov to get the job done. I'm going to say he wins a decision in a very toughly fought fight, or it goes to the judge scorecards, and Cory's going to have his moments too. Umar opened up as a minus 230. He's now minus 305. A lot of action coming in on him. Would want nothing to do with these types of lines. You had to be on him early. Or if you want to talk about how I feel about the line, I think that the value is on Cory Sandhagen. I think that if you're looking to chase some value, I mean, Cory Sandhagen, to be able to get him at plus 230, or it's potentially even higher by the time the fight takes place, maybe you grab him at like 260, 270. That's very realistic. That's where the value lies. If you're playing the long game, trying to attack value to profit long term, that's what you would do there. So that's how I feel about the fight. But give me Umar Nurmagomedov to win a decision and to be fighting for the title next. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this show up. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in, especially for those of you guys that stuck around all the way to the end here. Appreciate you guys more than ever. Do know we're aiming to hit the fight companion up for this event. I think it will be at 3 p.m. Eastern. I believe it's an earlier card. I think that is the case. Prelims start at 12. So hopefully we'll be kicking off the fight companion at 3 o'clock. Hope you guys join me. And just note, if you ever see me skip a fight companion here or there, obviously I got a life, I got things going on, but I aim to hit these fight companions up for every single card moving forward. So you just come take a look on the channel, see if that live event is scheduled in the morning. It will be scheduled, by early afternoon at least. I'll have that up so you'll see it's going down. And if you're following me on social media, you'll see me announce it anyway on IG, in my story, or on Twitter. You'll see it announced, and I hope to do one for this event, but I will be aiming to do them for all the big ones, of course. And I hope you guys join me. So appreciate you. Just before we leave, I'll leave you some quick parting words. It's a little late over here. I'm tired, but I'll give you guys a quality one that's quick. Stop eating those sugar cereals. Cut sugar out of your diet. Cut all the crap out of your food. All the seed, those seed oils in your food, man. It's something I've been paying attention to for the last couple of years, and I feel way better, man. I don't know if you guys remember, some of you guys have been following me for a long time. I had issues with asthma, this weird type of thing, man. It was like a weird asthma. I don't know how to explain it to you guys, but my body was always like constricted. I went through this little phase, and I've cleaned up my diet, and I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I think those types of foods you put in your body do kind of correlate to your body having weird reactions. And it might not be asthma for you. It might be something else. So just take note if you're having any type of health issues, clean your diet up and see, give it some time, clean it up and see how you feel after you clean it up. All right. Cut all that crap out of your body, man. Go educate yourself. There's a lot of solid YouTube channels and Instagram pages or Instagram profiles you can follow that go in depth on the poison that's out there. All right, guys. I'll leave you with that. Signing out. Teller.
The teller.